When we talk about time management, there's really two components to it. There's the tactical, which is, your Franklin Covey organizer or products such as OmniFocus or using the task functionality in Outlook or reading David Allen's book, Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Time Management, etc. And those are all very, very important components. But then there's also fully one half of it that's not being addressed, which is the mental and emotional aspect of time management. And that's the part that we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about today. I was talking to a gentleman by the name of Larry out in the foyer here a little while ago, and he did such a wonderful job of explaining kind of what his day is like at times. And it's a day that I think would be very much you could relate to, I would imagine. And he was describing a circumstance where he's focused, or his intention is to be focused on something for, say, an hour, prospecting, calling all of his existing leads, or prospecting real estate agents, or cross-selling the listing agent on every transaction, or whatever the scenario may be. And then all of a sudden he finds himself migrating, almost unbeknownst to him, what I call chasing the shiny object, and doing something else, completely derailing himself from the intended subject matter. So it's like you're working on something, and the next thing you know, you're working on something else. And your entire day is about bouncing around from one activity to the next, and the day ends, and you feel depleted, and you feel as if you didn't accomplish everything that you wanted to get done in that day. Does there happen to be anybody other than Larry in this room that experiences that? Raise your hand. Okay. So what I shared with Larry is I said, if it were only so simple as to just have the intention, I'm going to call on leads for the next hour, we'd all be much more successful than we are, me included. But there's an element that never gets addressed in most coaching platforms or presentations, etc., which is, why do we chase the shiny object? Why is it that we have a difficult time staying on task? What's driving the behavior of migrating to things that maybe are not our highest and best use of our time? So we want to spend some time talking about that, and we want to spend some time talking about it in the construct of your team, that being your processors, personal assistants, transaction coordinators, etc., that you work with every day. So Doug, you live in St. Louis. How far is it to Kansas City?
3 hours.
3 hours, and I'm going to click on this slide. Oh, I didn't turn it on, sorry. Where do I turn this on? There we go. Thank you. So it takes 3 hours to drive from St. Louis to Kansas City. Straight shot, right? No traffic? What if I told you that you had to get off at every exit the entire way from where you live to get to Kansas City, Missouri, and when you got off, you had to come to a stop at the bottom, and then you could get right back on and keep going, but you had to keep getting off at every exit. How long would it take? More than 3 hours, right? How many more?
Probably at least an extra 45 minutes to an hour.
That's all? How many exits are there between Kansas City and St. Louis?
Yeah, maybe I'm underestimating that.
I mean, I'd offer that it'd probably take at least twice as long, unless there's very few exits. But I think you get the point of my metaphor, okay? So the reality of it is this, is that most of us are experiencing our day in the manner that I just described about Doug's commute from St. Louis to Kansas City. We're constantly getting on and off the freeway. And what happens and why it takes so much longer if you have to get off at every exit is because you have to decelerate. You lose the velocity that you're currently having if you're straight shot in the fast lane at 70 miles an hour. You have to decelerate, come to a stop, reaccelerate. So here's a statistic for you that's very fascinating. The average amount of time that it takes for you to get back to doing what you were doing, once you've stopped doing it and chased that shiny object and moved on to something else, is 13 minutes. So if I'm processing alone as a processor, and I take a phone call from another borrower and spend 5 minutes with them on the phone talking about their W-2s or their 2106 non-reimbursed business expenses or whatever it is, it will take me 13 minutes to get to that same place that I was at in processing that file, working up that 1008, 13 minutes just to get back to that point, because we have to regain the velocity that we had. If you're a loan originator, and your objective this morning was to call for an hour all of your leads that you have in your database, or call past clients to to try to cultivate refinance opportunities in your existing past customer database, and you take that call, or you decide to get up from your desk and go ask your processor, hey, did we get that loan approved? Or did we get that appraisal review in? Or whatever the scenario may be, it will take you 13 minutes to get back to the point that you were at when you stopped in the velocity of that lead follow-up strategy. Now think about how many times it happens all day long. All day. So when we talk about efficiency and productivity and time management, one of the first things that we want to talk about is staying on task. Okay, so staying on task is key. And compartmentalizing our day and understanding the importance of velocity, no different than when you're on the freeway driving at 70 miles an hour, we want to stay on task. But we have to understand what causes us to get off task. Why do we exit the freeway? So, I'm going to paint a scenario and we'll see if anybody can get the answer to this. Dave Robinette, I'm counting on you, buddy. So, not to call you out, but if I am in the process of calling on leads and prospecting, and a thought pops into my head, I wonder if we got that appraisal review in, and I pick up the phone and I buzz my processor, or I go into his or her office and interrupt them in the middle of their day, which now has caused both myself to get off the freeway and my processor to get off the freeway, so it's twice as much damage. What do you think the reason is that I chase that shiny object? So what we're looking for is what causes us to go off task. Anybody want to take a shot at it? Yell out a word. Trace. Done. You don't need to say anything else. One word, fear. Nailed it. Great job. Dave, she beat you to it. Fear. Fear is the primary driver of us losing velocity. Now we have to understand that our minds are driven by fear. You see, our mind was constructed in such a way through evolution to assess fear at all times. There was a point in time, very early in our evolutionary process, where Cro-Magnon man would walk outside of the cave to forage for berries, would walk around the corner and get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. We didn't have the cognitive ability back then to think into the future, to protect ourselves. So we had to develop this for our sheer survival. It's the same component of your brain that you use when you cross the street and you decide to look both ways first. You're thinking about what are the potential dangers that can occur. So when the red light's blinking on your phone, or you hear your cell phone buzz, or you hear the little bell go off in Outlook, or that thought just pops into your mind, I wonder if that got done. Know that it's fear that's happening. And that fear is what causes us to be far less efficient and causes us to bounce around from activity to activity. I used to make the erroneous statement that I'm a phenomenal multitasker. There's no such thing. Multitasking is complete BS. You can actually only work on one thing at a time ever. There's no such thing as working on more than one thing at a time by definition when you really get down to the granular detail of it. When you are multitasking, what you're doing is stopping and starting, getting on and off the freeway frequently, several times in the span of a minute. Okay? So we have to understand that we have to stay on the freeway to be more efficient, and a part of that process, by the way, is that we have to respect the need for our team to stay on the freeway, because we are the biggest violators of them getting off the freeway. And we will get to some solutions about that a little bit later on, but we are, because of our fear, consistently taking them off that off-ramp and causing them to lose the velocity that they have. So in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a very old classic, he talks about a really great metaphor. And it's called sand, pebbles, and rocks. So if I, wheeled out a table here in front of you, and I had a big fishbowl, and I had 3 boxes, one filled with pebbles, one filled with sand, one filled with rocks, and I put the sand in the fishbowl, and then I poured the pebbles into the fishbowl, and then I put the rocks into the fishbowl, I would run out of room, metaphorically. I wouldn't have enough room to fit all those contents into the fishbowl. But if I take those same items, those rocks, and take them out, and then the pebbles, and then the sand, and I put them in a different order, I can suddenly fit those exact same contents back in the fishbowl. If I put the rocks in first, and then I pour the pebbles in, and they filtrate their way all around the rocks, and then I pour in the sand, and now all the gaps are filled in, the exact same contents fit. So what's the metaphor? The metaphor is this: your calendar is your fishbowl. Your calendar is your fishbowl. And those of you that are having a difficult time staying on task because of fear are oftentimes experiencing a day that is ruled by quicksand. You're spending a lot of your time playing in the sand, and then you get to very few rocks by the end of the day. By a show of hands, how many of you have ever had the experience where all of the high payoff activities that you intended to get to, you didn't get to them because you were playing in sand all day? Yeah. Okay, so the first thing that we need to understand is that the art form of productivity, efficiency, time management, and being a successful loan originator is that we need to know what our rocks are, and we need to put them in our fishbowl first and have a commitment to ourself that we're going to work on rock time consistently. And when we have extra time, work on pebbles and sand, and we'll get to how that might look in just a moment. So examples of rock time, in my world, I mean, in my opinion for you as an originator, it's a pretty short list, okay? If you're a producing branch manager, it's maybe a slightly larger list. But for a loan originator, calling leads, calling past clients to do annual mortgage planning reviews, calling existing clients in a loan in process only for the purposes of trying to cultivate a referral, not for the purposes of statusing them on anything. That's a processor's job. Calling prospects of referral partners, so cross-selling the listing agent, cross-selling the CPA, and calling your existing referral partners on a consistent basis. Ideally, that's what your week looks like. I mean, think about it for a moment. If that's all you did all week, was talk to people who need to borrow money or people that could refer you to people that need to borrow money, how much more successful would you be? A lot. In 2004, I did 676 loans. All my production. I had a team of people around me, but I talked to every one of those clients, and I worked 25 hours a week. People find that to be almost impossible to understand, but it actually isn't, because all I did was those activities and nothing else. One other thing that I did, which is critically important, is I met with my team once a week to go over our pipeline. Super, super important. Why? Because if I don't know what's going on with my pipeline, that very same fear that Tracy was talking about will rear its ugly head consistently throughout the week and derail me and cause me to get off the freeway. So I need to know and understand the nature of mind. The nature of mind is to be in fear all the time. So I need to put mechanisms into place to soothe the fear-based mind. It's very interesting to me when I talk to loan originators who tell me, I'm too busy right now to talk to you for whatever reason that we're supposed to talk because it's the end of the month. Well, what does that mean? It's the end of the month. Well, at the end of the month, we're funding a lot of, well, are you a processor or are you a loan originator? If you're having that experience that you're busy at the end of the month or busier at the end of the month than you are on the 12th of the month, that tells me you're caught into processing your files. So I want you to keep that in mind. You're probably spending time doing activities that shouldn't really be in your job description. Okay, so a simple tactic that I would like everybody to try is to give me 1 hour a day of rock time. I don't want any more than that. I think it's a very reasonable request. It isn't something that should be too terribly difficult for you. And the amount of time for rock time that I want, or excuse me, the time frame that I want is sometime in the morning, and we'll call it 9:30 to 10:30. I want to give you some time to get into the office, clean out your inbox, check your voicemail, copy your rate sheets, check the market, do whatever you need to do to get settled in, get yourself a coffee, blah, blah, blah. And from 9:30 to 10:30, for the next 20 business days, over the course of 1 month, I want you to have an uninterruptible commitment with yourself to proactively call on leads and referral partners for 1 hour. All I'm asking for is 20 hours in the next 30 days. Now, it's really important that we understand that fear will kick in. There will be, in each and every one of you, a thought that will pop in many times in all likelihood during that hour that will potentially sabotage that behavior. Again, it'll sound something like, I wonder if we got that appraisal review in. I wonder if that loan's going to fund today. I wonder if that red light that's blinking on my phone is another deal. That's when we have to stay disciplined and understand that that is a storyteller that is playing in our head that has no basis in reality. It's just a story. And that's why I only want 1 hour. Because you see, if you start at 9:30 and at 9:46 you have that thought, that sabotaging storyteller that pops into your head, you can soothe yourself by knowing that at 10:30 I can go play in the sand. That's why I only want, the great mistake that's made is people try to block out too much time. You try to block out 2 hours or 2.5 or 3, you're going to blow through it. It's too long of a stretch of time, at least initially, for you to stay on task and stay disciplined. Now here's what I've found from a great many of my clients. One of them's in the audience somewhere around here, did it for a couple of weeks. I don't know where Mike's at. Mike, raise your hand. Trejo. Here you go, buddy. That first week alone, when you gave me an hour and I asked you to report to me, you picked up like 7 deals by calling your past client database. Okay, now Mike happens to have a very large, average check size. It was a very, very profitable week. Just 1 hour. I promise you that if you give me 1 hour for the next 20 days of calling your past clients, doing annual mortgage planning reviews, using some of the stuff that Craig Strent talked about maybe in his presentation about equity repositioning and things of that nature, you will find that you will pick up significant amounts of business. Most of you are not on task on the freeway without getting off for a solid hour on any day during your 30-day stretch. The key to it is that you will gain velocity and momentum and you'll become much better at what you do. Think about it for a moment. If I'm selling and I'm delivering my presentation, okay, and I've got my rate sheets in front of me and I'm in my groove, and then I preempt that process and I go migrate to doing something else, and then I try to come back, not only is it going to take me time to get back to that place, but it's a massive pattern interrupt and a massive velocity interrupt, and I'm less successful. But if I'm in sales mode consistently for an entire hour, I'm going to get better and better at what I do, especially if somebody says yes to me, and then I have a little bounce in my step, and the next phone call I get on, they can feel my energy because I now have confidence. Very, very important. So I already talked about why multitasking doesn't work. So let me, before I get into some simple tactical strategies, and then I'm going to open it up to the Q&A that we talked about. I just want to say that, my partner Julie and I, we hosted in early March a team productivity and customer service workshop. We had 29 loan processors and transaction coordinators from different parts of the country that were sent to us by our Leadership 360 clients. So they sent their team to us, and we worked with their team for 3 days. It was an incredibly enlightening experience to work with staff for 3 days. And we create this very safe space, and they opened up to us, and they really shared with us what their challenges are and why they weren't getting done as much work as they wanted to get done, etc. And the thing that was the prevailing theme, and not from like a bitching place, it was just honest, open dialogue, was that my loan officer's fear completely wrecks my day all day long. And that fear looks like not just interrupting them, but getting involved in the file. And those of you that have watched my presentations on the perfect loan process and the analogy of the relay race that I talk about, and you being the person that runs the first leg of the relay, and how I talk about the fact that when you get reinserted into the process, what you're creating is a new need for significant communication to transpire, and that's where communication breaks down. So you picking up a file and giving, the client calls in and says, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I can't get you the K1s that you're asking for because, we don't get those on the hedge fund until September, and we need to close this loan by July. And you say, oh, okay, no problem. I'll let my processor know. And then you hang up the phone, and then another call comes in, or another thought that's fear-based pops in your head, and you migrate over that and you forget. Okay, and then your processor calls a little bit later or the next day and says, hey, what about those K1s? And the client says, I told Tim yesterday that I can't get them. That happens all day long. It's a pervasive theme. By the loan originators getting too involved in the process, we're going to talk about the solution to that. And the solution is this. You need to have more consistent, shorter pipeline meetings. You need to have pipeline meetings at least once a week. And in some cases, if you have a big pipeline, it's actually really healthy to have them maybe even daily. Mike Metz, who was on stage this morning, I know he has them daily with his team. Jimmy Bakhtiar, who's a client of mine out of Albuquerque that works for Dave's company, he has them every day at noon. 15 minutes. It's a quick huddle. Think of football for a minute, okay? We huddle up every day at noon for 15 minutes, and we discuss, bless you, whoever that was, and we discuss whatever it is that we need to get an answer to. Now think about it for a moment. What we're really doing here is we're taming the fear-based mind. So Trace, if you've got a thought that pops in your head at 3:30 this afternoon about one of your files, and you know that you're meeting with your team tomorrow at noon because you meet with your team every day at noon, you can simply put it on the list because most things can wait till tomorrow at noon. And then you come into the huddle and you go, what's going on with this? What's going on with this? What's going on with this? And they ask you what they need. The processor is, I need to know what you want to do about this, and I need to know what you want to do about that, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, ready? Break. And everybody goes. Now we're staying on the freeway. We're compartmentalizing the communication rather than these hit-and-run accidents that happen all day long. See, we dump our fear into their life. We pick their phone up and preempt their day. We need to stop doing that. And the way to mitigate and manage that more effectively is to have more frequent, shorter meetings and to keep a list of the things. Julie and Doreen and I, those three of us work together. We're doing a really effective job of that. Like I used to pick up the phone and call Doreen, my personal assistant, all day long, maybe 6, 7 times a day. Hey, can you do this? Hey, what's going on with that? Did we get that complete? I'm taking her off the freeway every single time because of my fear. Now what I do is I ask myself the question, can it wait until we meet the next time? If it can, I put it on my list. When I go into my meeting, I've got my list. If it can't, which it can't every once in a while, okay, then what I'll do is I will pick a strategic time to ask that question when I think it's probably not going to be preemptive to the person. Now, Shane Day, who is another client in our program that also works with Dave, he's up-leveling it, I think, a really unique way. So his team came to the Productivity and Efficiency Workshop, and he now has the same time of the day for the entire team for rock time. So every morning at 10 a.m., Shane, as the originator, is on task for an hour calling on leads. At that same time, Bree and Amanda, his two teammates, are working up submissions and funding loans. And it's uninterrupted time for all three of them. They all know that they're in rock time. Now, what does that mean, uninterrupted time? Here's what it means. Everybody has radical permission to put their autoresponder on their email. Hi, you've reached the desk of Shane Day. I'll be responding to emails starting at 11 a.m. I'm currently working with a client on their financing needs. So again, why do we do that? Great communication to the consumer, letting them know when I'm going to be getting back to them. And more importantly, at a deeper cut, you're removing the fear that's embedded in you that they're going to be upset that they didn't hear back from me right away by informing them when you're going to get back to them. They change their voicemails at that same time. They have a secondary voicemail. Hi, you've reached the desk of Bree. I'm in the middle of processing a loan for submission and working it up to submit it to our underwriter. I'll be responding to phone calls promptly at 11 o'clock. Please leave your name and number where I can reach you. Everybody has complete permission to stay on task for 1 hour every day. And now they're in the process of trying to do it twice a day, one time in the morning, one time in the afternoon. Think about how much more work would get done if you had 2 hours each day, your entire team, that was completely on task and nobody was ever interrupted to where they could stay on the freeway. All right, so here's a suggestion for you. You're on the phone all day. I presume that most of you, based upon your personality and the nature of what you do for a living, are good talkers. You'd probably rather talk than write, I think, in most of your cases. And I would imagine that most of you can talk a lot faster than you could write and communicate the same thing. So a suggestion that I've been making to a lot of my clients, and a few of them have adopted it and really like it, is this, is that when you get off the phone, you close that client says, yes, I want to work with you. Ideally, if you're a great loan officer, once you get that 1003 going, you're documenting the conversation log pretty thoroughly so you can communicate cleanly to your team member as to all the nuances of this file. Here's what their kids' names are. Here's what's important to them. Here's what we discussed in terms of loan program. They're going to be out of town for a couple of weeks, but we never do a great job of communicating all that because it takes a really long time to type. And it's also a fairly significant pattern interrupt from what we do all day. So one of the things that I suggest you, Julie and I do this very effectively with each other in our work environment as coaches, is that you simply then take out your phone, you're still in talking mode, hit voice recorder on your iPhone or your Android or whatever you have, and record a voice memo, a detailed voice memo to your processor. Hey, Mary, it's Tim. Okay, this is on the Jones file. Really great people. Seems like she's the driver in the relationship. I think we have a great opportunity to provide great service to her. She's a person of influence. I think that we can get some referrals from her. She's the head of the PTA. In terms of their tax returns, they're in the process of getting them done. They're on extension, blah, 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 blah. Email the voice memo to your processor. Title it. I'm glad one person likes this idea. Thank you. Title it Jones New Loan, okay, which we'll get to the subject line of importance of that in the email in a second. And then your processor simply clicks and drags that into the new file that they've created on this borrower. Now, when the processor gets the loan for the first time, imagine this. They open it up, they go to that file, they double-click on that voice memo from you, and while they're thumbing through the file, they're listening to your narrative, bringing them up to speed on this file. Now, doesn't that inherently sound much more efficient, much more impactful, and make a lot more sense? Okay, so there's a suggestion for you. Next one. And this goes kind of the core, and I'd be happy to get into this in more depth if anybody's interested when it comes to the Q&A portion, but this goes to the core of what time management really is. I mean, at the end of the day, there is no such thing as managing time. The only thing that we have to manage is what we do with our time. The tasks that we choose to work on, both in our business and in our personal life. So it's not really time management, it's task management that we're seeking. And in order to manage tasks effectively, we have to get crystal clear on what our hell yeses and our hell nos are. And I go one step further. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. So what are your hell yeses in your life? Is getting home to have dinner with your wife and your kids or your husband and your kids a hell yes? Is making sure that you have a couple of weeks vacation a year a hell yes? Is making sure that you eat healthy or that you get a workout in every day so you can decrease your nervous system and sweat some of those toxins out of your body important? Is calling on all your realtor prospects a hell yes? That's up for you to determine, but what I would offer to you is that if you go through we do a very in-depth analysis on this as a part of becoming integrated to the L360 program, where we really look in a granular way at where is the time being spent. What most people find out, and what I have found out personally, and I'll tell you what the process is actually, and it may sound cumbersome, but I did it for 13 consecutive days in January, and I would suggest you only need to do it for 5 to 7, but every half hour, from the time that you wake up until the time you go to bed, keep a running log of what you chose to do with your time. Now, it may sound cumbersome that every 30 minutes you're going to go to your computer and go to the Word document that you've created and type 2 sentences, but it's an incredibly powerful process. I did it, again, for 13 straight days, so it's not that bad. Okay, and what happens is that usually by the second or third day, I start getting the emails from my clients or the phone calls going, holy shit, like I'm spending a lot of time on stuff that is really not a high use of my time. The awareness becomes very evident, like, oh my gosh, why am I spending so much time on these things? Again, it goes back to fear, and that's sand time. So the first step is putting a microscope over your day and looking at where your time is being spent, and then starting to get really clear on what a hell yes is versus a hell no. You know, I'm wondering if you've ever analyzed a mover, somebody who moves people's houses. They're very interesting and fascinating in the way that they work. You know, they pick up the armoire or the box filled with dishes, and if they're really smart, there's a label on it that states kitchen or bedroom or living room on the place that they're moving it to. And they move that box onto the truck and they put it down. And then when they get to the new place of home ownership, then they move it to that exact location in the house. They do that because they're looking for optimum efficiency. They're going to make their $2,000 for moving your house, whether it takes them 8 hours or 16 hours. So if they can get it done in less time and be more efficient, they're going to make the same amount of money and have a higher hourly rate of pay. You never see a mover, a good mover, pick up a box, take it off the truck, put it down in the entryway, go back to the truck, move the refrigerator in, then go back to that box and move it into the room that it's supposed to go to. No, they touch it once. They touch it once. And this is an important thing for you to start looking at. How many touches are me and my team involving ourselves in the processing of a loan, the facilitation of lead follow-up, etc. Subject line in email is really important. So we need to start using the subject line in an effort to inform the receiver of your email what this is about. Think of a headline in a newspaper article. Okay? That headline is intended to tell you what it is that this article is about. Now think about how many emails you have in your inbox. And there's two kinds of emails. There's black and there's gray. Black is something you haven't read yet. Gray is something you opened up and then closed because you looked at it and said, oh, I don't want to deal with this right now, and you just closed it. Okay. You opened it up, looked at it, closed it. Remember the mover? You just touched it once, and you're going to have to touch it again. Now, how many times does that happen? Every day. You check your voicemail. You save it. Why are you saving it? Is their voice really that beautiful to listen to? I mean, what's the purpose of saving it? We want to start thinking along these lines of like, how can I start touching just everything once? There's an actionable item associated with everything that you do during your day. You open the email, you read it, and you either delete it or respond to it or file it. But email is not a task management tool. Most of you are probably using your email as a list for yourself of all the stuff you've got to do. But think about how many times this happens. You go in your email, you decide you want to start working on that thing, whatever it is, and you start going back through your emails, of which none of them are labeled properly, because nobody does a great job of that, and you have to open up the email, and you're like, okay, this isn't the one, you close it, and you go down to the next one, oh, no, this isn't it. Raise your hand if that happens to you. Every one of those is stop-starts. Getting off the freeway again, getting back on, getting off, getting back on. So within your culture, within your team, you need to start using the subject line to eliminate that. See, if you could go through that list and it said, Jones file W-2s, you know what that email is. You don't need to open it. Jackson file appraisal review. So the name of the client, colon, what it is. As a team, you guys should start sending emails within your organization in this manner so you don't have to keep opening and closing stuff and you understand what you're going to be looking at. The next one has kind of been already mentioned, but you know, in an abstract sort of way, but stop using email to dump your worries. Okay, so it's like, I've got that fear. Well, I don't want to hold on to this fear. It's like holding on to a hot stone. So great, I'm going to send an email and throw it into my processor's inbox. And then hopefully she'll get back to me and soothe my fear. Remember, you're just creating tremendous inefficiency for them. And then they're going to send you an email back that you then have to read, which creates inefficiency for you. And how much does this happen all day? Pinging each other back and forth via email and constantly interrupting each other. Every time we hear the bell go off. What is it? It's fear. Okay, I'm going to put it on my list. More frequent, consistent meetings of shorter durations. It can wait till tomorrow. I'll find out whether that appraisal came in tomorrow. Whoops. Was it the last one there? Or? No, yeah, we had a little technical glitch there before we wrap this up. Can we pop that back up there, Andre? And start getting your questions ready, because we're going to get the mics ready and have some fun just helping with Q&A. Oh, I mentioned the autoresponders and voicemail, okay? Really, really effective. Okay, so like I used to go play golf every Friday at 11 a.m. pretty religiously when I was a loan originator. And I realized that my voicemail is a way of communicating to somebody who calls in. The thing is that people don't need to get to you right away. That's not what they're looking for. That's our story. They need to know when they're going to hear back from you. That's all they really ultimately want. Hi, you've reached the desk of Tim Braheem at First Rate Financial. Today is Friday and the time is 11 a.m. I'm going to be out of the office for the next several hours working on my business. Kinda, really playing golf, but I'm going to be out of the office for the next several hours working on my business. I'll be returning phone calls promptly at 5 o'clock. If this is in regards to a current loan, please at 0 go back to the operator and ask for our transaction coordinator, Elisa. She'd be happy to help you and direct you to the appropriate person. If this is a new loan or somebody that needs to speak directly to me, please leave your name and number as to where I can return your call at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, when I'm done playing golf, I check my voicemail. I'd have a lot of these. Click, click, click. Those are just the people that listen to us. I don't need to get to it right now. Or maybe hit 0 and went back to the operator. And then I'd have 2 or 3 people say, hey, Tim, my name's Bill. I need to borrow money from you. Thanks a lot for letting me know that you're not going to be in. Please call me at 5 o'clock at this number. And I'd return those phone calls. Never did anybody leave me a voicemail saying, I don't want to work with you because you weren't available at 11. That's not what they're looking for. Same thing with the autoresponder for your email. Use those two mediums to communicate proactively to the person as to what they can expect. Set the proper expectations to take the heat off of yourself. We mentioned meeting for shorter periods of time more frequently. This is a team tip, but one that is being used by a couple of the processors that we worked with very, very effectively. And I really want you to get this. And I would suggest that you could even go low-tech with this. You know those big calendars that are out for your desk that the title companies used to give out? I don't know if they still do. But I like using that more than an electronic calendar, perhaps, because they have more spaciousness because they're big boxes. But what a processor should be doing ideally is when they get a file and they're reviewing it for the first time, there are certain stakes in the sand, if you will, during that process. So our financing contingency is up on the 12th. So on the 9th, they write in their calendar, Jones financing contingency, 3 days. Loan's supposed to close on the 30th. So in their calendar, Jones loan closing in 3 days. So now what we're doing here is if they did this on every file, they could walk in the morning, look at their calendar, and know what rocks they have. Those are all the high payoff important things that they need to do. Those are the things that must get done today, for sure. We need to meet those financing contingencies on these 3 files today. And then another one is submission. So it's submission, approval, funding. Okay? So if they were to put those into their calendar when they first open the loan, they would be giving themselves a heads up and proactively knowing. How many, I'm sure this happens to almost everybody in the room. You get to that day or the day before that day that the contract says that you have to have loan approval and you haven't submitted it yet, and your hair catches fire, and you start to preempt everybody else's day and ask for a favor of the underwriter. Can you please put this at the top of the stack, et cetera, and I'm seeing several of you nod, and that's because you didn't plan it out. If you had a mechanism that told you 3 days prior, you wouldn't have to drop everything you're doing because you just realized, oh my goodness. And also it's horrible customer service, of course. Okay, we can take that off the screen. Actually, I'll just mention this and then we'll go into Q&A. So Leadership 360 is our 1-year coaching program that starts in November, business and life planning retreat in Costa Rica. Some of you, I'm sure, stuck around and watched the video that was played down in the other ballroom earlier. We are accepting applications at this time for anybody who would like to apply to be in this year's group. We only take 9 people every year. We have 3 people that are already committed and under contract, so we have 6 spots open. So I would imagine that we'll be sold out within the next couple of weeks, bless you. So I expect in the next couple of weeks we'll be sold out. The interview process is a mutual exploratory process, meaning Julie and I are getting to know you to see if you feel like a good fit for working with us, and you're getting to know us to see if we feel like a good fit for working with you. Those of you that want to know more information about it, I will be hanging out there indefinitely after I'm done with this presentation, sitting outside, answering questions not only of that program, but anything that I can help you with in your business. So know that when we're done here, we can migrate out there. But for now, what I really want to do is I really want to open it up to you. And again, like I said, for those of you that arrived a little bit late, were you raising your hand? Okay, no problem. We'll get a mic to you because we want everybody to be able to hear your question. And thank you for wanting to ask a question. There are no questions that are off limits for me. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and as a coach, I get asked questions all day long. So you can ask any question that you need help with. Don't underestimate how many other people in this room are probably going through the exact same thing as you, and how much you would really be in service to all of them by asking that question, because by me answering it for you, I'm probably answering it for everybody else and helping them in the process. So the rest of our time together is going to be kind of a town hall meeting. I'm going to pull up a chair, and let's get a mic, if we can, please, Julie, to this first lady here. And what I'd like you to do, please, is first state your name and your title, so loan officer, branch manager, et cetera, so I get an opportunity. Could you raise your hand, please, ma'am? Great. Start thinking of questions you have, folks. Please.
This is embarrassing, but my name's Andrea. I'm a
Hi,
loan
Andrea.
officer. Hi. And when you talked about the borrower that called you with the K-1 information that he was, what do you do with that telephone conversation?
Well, not embarrassing at all, and an absolutely outstanding question. So let me confirm, because I just want to make sure that I understand what you've asked. You're working on you've got a loan in process. Borrower calls in and says, hey, can I talk to Andrea, please? Because you're like, Superwoman. I mean, you're supposed to have the answers to everything. You take that call. They communicate with you, can't get the K-1s until September, et cetera. Okay. 2 things have to take place, Andrea, and they're both critical. The first, and I would suggest that you go to our Performance Experts website and watch and listen to the interview that I did with Dave Savage back about a year ago on the perfect loan process. I think you'll find it to be very, very helpful. And I talk about it in there. But what you're talking about is a situation where the baton has not been passed from you to the next person on your team that is managing the relationship with that client. So they wouldn't call you if they knew that they were supposed to be calling somebody else. So the way the script goes is like this, Andrea. When I'm done, when the client has said yes to me, which is when my job really ends, when they say, yes, I want to work with you, I say, great. My team and I are going to really enjoy doing a great job for you over the next 30 days getting your loan done for you. Let me share with you how we work. I realized a long time ago that I was kind of the jack of all trades and a master of only a few. And what I really do best is that I help people understand their financing options. I'm a student of the financial markets, and I present viable loan solutions to people to help them make sure that they're making an intelligent choice with the largest indebtedness that they'll ever take on in their life. But what I'm not good at is filling out paperwork, understanding what an underwriter's looking for. And that's why I've assembled a team of experts. And the next person that you're going to talk to is my partner, Elisa. And she's absolutely terrific at what she does. Now, we need to set up a time for you to do your 1003 with Elisa. And just know that if you have any questions about the documentation that she asks of you, like pay stubs, bank statements, et cetera, you definitely want to contact her, not me, as it relates to those types of questions. So I've, in a very polite, professional way, said, please don't call me anymore for that type of stuff, because I'm not the person you want to call. And I've given a very good explanation as to why. Now, that's the first part. So that's a clean baton pass. It's establishing for the client that your job is done, and this is the next expert that you're going to be meeting with and communicating with on my team. Now, here's the important part, and this is the one that that has some fear embedded in it. So I realized that there's a little fear, but I went through this personally, and what's on the backside, again, fear is almost always illusion. It's almost always just a story we're making up in our head. Most of the time, it's not true. Okay, so the fear here would be, well, they're not going to want to work with me if I don't take their call. Well, that's just not true. Myself, and I could probably call out 5 or 6 other loan originators in the room, they would all tell you the same thing, that have embarked upon that path, that they don't really care who they talk to. They just want to get an answer that's correct from an intelligent person in an expedient way. And by the way, realize that I didn't call Elisa my assistant, because nobody wants to talk to your assistant. They want to talk to your partner. It's your job to build the credibility of your teammate. So the script that you need to learn, Andrea, is the I don't know script. And it goes like this. Hi, Tim. It's Andrea. Elisa asked me for, K1s, and we don't get them until blah, 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 blah. Can you please tell me what we should do? Andrea, I don't know. But I know that Elisa does. May I transfer you to her right now? And I had to learn that script with realtors. It's even more fear-based with realtors, because there's this whole thing that we feel that and it totally makes sense when you think about it. So you start in the business, you don't have an assistant, you don't have a team, you're sharing a processor. And you have to be everything to everybody. And you're hungry, so you tell them, call me on the weekends, no problem, call me in the evenings. Sure, I'll come over to your house to do your app at 9 o'clock at night. I mean, you're willing to do just about anything. And then you get to the point where you're doing 3 or 4 loans, and you start to realize, not only am I running out of time, but boy, if I could figure out a way to scale this and do 8 or 9 loans, I could be living in a different house, and my kids' college could be paid for. Okay? But what's been established is this belief, as I keep going back to the storyteller, a belief in our head that the only way that they're going to want to work with me, that being the client and or the realtor, is if I'm always there for them. And I am the one that has the answers to all their questions. Because that's what you have done in the past, and you've been thanked for it. And it's that attaboy or attagirl, that thank you, that is the hook. That's the seedling of the story. That if I answer their questions, they'll like me. And let's just cut through all the BS. We all want to be liked, me included. There isn't a person in this room that doesn't care about that. We all want to be seen, liked, loved, and accepted. So especially when it comes to our financial wherewithal, it becomes very tricky. Because we buy into a story that if I don't take the call, I don't always have the answers, I'm not always there for them, they won't like me and they won't work with me anymore. It's not true. They want an answer, and they want it from a qualified person, and you can start to build out your team, and you need to really adopt some of those scripts. Is that helpful? Perfect. Great. Who's next? Down here, please. And then you'll be after that. Thanks. Thanks for your question, Andrea. It was an excellent question. Really great.
Good afternoon, Tim. My name is Brett McDonald. I'm a loan officer.
Hi, Brett.
I wondered if you've ever tried the checking email just twice a day tactic and how that worked for you.
I would love to tell you that I have, and I haven't. I still need to work on that. I think that, I still have some, I don't think mine's driven so much by fear more than just by habit at this point. I'm just kind of habitually checking it a little bit more frequently than I would like to, although I have definitely gotten a lot better where I'll go a couple hours without checking it. The thing that I would encourage you to consider, Brett, is what's the message that you're sending, not just you, all of us, me included, what's the message that I'm sending to the people that I'm communicating with? Meaning this, if I am constantly responding to everybody in my world quickly, as if it were instant messenger or texting, then I'm really sending them a message that you can always get an immediate response from me. I'm green lighting them. I'm telling them this is, you want to get to me, email me, because I'm all over it all the time, constantly looking at my phone, never present with anybody, etc. If they get a response from me 4 hours later, And I think that you've probably experienced this from the time we first started working together. I've definitely, Julie's nodding, thank you, I'll pay you later. But I mean, really, I have definitely gotten better at like not necessarily being a slave to it, but it's still a work in process for me. So I can't honestly tell you that I have tried like only checking it once or twice a day, although I have had days where I've only checked it once or twice. But I think that it's a really interesting thing. And what I would suggest, Brett, if you want to try it, just try it for a short period of time. Try it for 3 days and see how it works. You know, really make the fear minimal. If you try to go, you know, I'm just going to do this from now on, that's a little scary because you have no social proof that it's going to be okay. And the mind doesn't really work that way. So then also insulate the fear or safety net the fear by putting that autoresponder on there. Hi, what's your last name, Brett?
McDonald.
Hi, you've reached the desk of Brett McDonald. Today is, September the 4th, and I will be checking emails 2 times today, both at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. If it's something urgent, you may call me on my cell phone or my office line and give them the number. You're now proactively letting everybody know what the expectation is as to when they're going to hear back from you, and in doing so, minimizing your own fear that you're experiencing, because the fear is, are they going to be upset, right? Isn't that really what we're up against here?
Yes.
So by informing them and giving them an alternative, we can start to eliminate that fear. Is that helpful?
Yes, sir.
Great. Any other questions? Are you good?
Thank you.
Okay. Get you in a second. This gentleman here.
Hi, how's it going, Tim?
Hi.
I'm Tony I'm a loan officer from St. Louis. I'm in the exact same situation of what you just described, the first person to Andrea, where I have been working by myself with no team and need to know where and how to get to that next step, where I'm too busy to do it all myself.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough little dynamic, right? So, what comes first, the cart or the horse? So there is this kind of leap of faith that we need to take. That is that if we build it, it will come. To like use that whole field of dreams analogy, right? So it's like you have the social proof here. You heard me interview 3 people this morning, all of which have, large teams. And I'm another person that you can draw from, and there are plenty of other people in this room as well. So, yeah, you're like, how many loans are you doing a month right now?
Between like 6 and 10, 11,
Okay,
12.
so you're very tapped out. You're doing 6 to 10 units a month without any other assistance.
Correct.
Okay, so here's kind of the next level of that process of logging your time. So I want you to envision this for a moment. You open up a Word document, and for the next week, from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, every 30 minutes, made copies of rate sheets, checked voicemail from 9 to 9:30, 9:30 to 10, called the appraiser, argued with him about his appraisal number, asked him to do, get a couple of extra comps, 10 to 10:30, called on leads, et cetera, okay? You've got this long list at the end of the day. And inclusive of that is probably like, got on Expedia and booked my flight to Vegas for Steven's event, and then went on the internet and, paid for his event and that kind of stuff. And there's all these things that we do every day, okay? So next question is this. How much money do you want to make in the next 12 months?
I don't really know if I have an exact figure on that. I mean, it's
Give me a good, solid number, an ambitious number, but not ridiculous.
$250,000.
$250,000. How many hours a week do you want to work?
40 hours a week.
40, good. I like it. How many weeks out of the year do you want to have for vacation? And when I say vacation, you're not checking in.
2.
Okay, so you're willing to work, thanks for the easy round numbers. So you're willing, it's perfect actually, because I don't need to get out my phone and calculate this. So you're willing to work 50 weeks at 40 hours a week, so 2,000 hours, and he wants to make $250,000, okay? So pretty simple, you want to make $125 an hour, right? You just defined your hourly rate of pay. We are all paid by the hour. Every one of us in this room are paid by the hour. The unique thing about this job that we do is we get to choose what our hourly rate of pay is based upon the task management that we choose to endeavor in. Just like I said at the beginning, that's what time management really is task management. So in your case, you want to make $125 an hour. You've just established for me, your words, not mine, what your worth is. So when you go back to that list, which should be several pages long, after a week of logging your time, I want you to go through it with highlighting it, either with a highlighter or just, color coding it in the Word document using, the changing of the color of the words. And I want you to highlight everything in red that you would not pay somebody $125 an hour to do. And I want you to highlight everything in green that you would pay someone $125 an hour to do. And I want you to copy and paste all of the red stuff, and my hunch is it's a pretty healthy list. By the way, taking a 1003 is on that list. There are plenty of people that could do a better job of taking a loan application than you likely can. And I used to be like the king of the 2.5-hour loan app. I was very good at it, okay? But it's filling out paperwork is what we're talking about. So you want to copy and paste all those red activities into a separate document. And this just became the job description of the first hire that you're going to have on your team. And what you've just done is created a ton of white space in your day. And it's your job to fill that in with more green activities. And here's the beauty of it. If you fill in that space with $125 an hour activities, you're not going to make $125 an hour next year.
Right.
And you're not going to make $250,000. You're going to make $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. That was my experience. I got myself to a point where I was at about $1,150 an hour. Okay, and when you're like at that level, you start going, I think I need somebody to go get my dry cleaning, or I think I need somebody to go pick up my lunch. I mean, because like these are things that, just don't make sense for me to be spending my time on anymore, and that's where it becomes really refined. Is that helpful?
It's extremely helpful.
There's a whole other subject matter there, by the way, for your question is outstanding, and my hunch is because I'm seeing a lot of people write notes. Thank you for asking your question, because I think it's really helpful to a lot of other people in this room other than you. The mistake that we then make is we throw a body at our problem. Now, here's the thing. When you first got in this business, nobody told you that you were going to have to be a human resources director. Nobody told you that you were going to have to be a leader. Nobody told you you were going to have to be an ops manager. But the minute that you make that first hire and start to build your team, you are becoming all of those things. So that's why, like in our program, we spend a whole day, as an example, just on operational systems. And then the day right after that is entirely spent in Costa Rica on hiring, trading, compensating, and culture. Because those are the two key pillars to taking it to the next level. Anybody that's doing 20, 25, 30 loans has transitioned, in most cases, from being an entrepreneur, jack of all trades, to being a professionally managed little company that has a culture, that has operations, and makes the right hires. Now, when I retired from being a loan originator, Mary was my senior person on my team. I had been in the business for 14 and a half years, and Mary is my senior processor, and she had been with me for 13 years. Tina was the least seniored person on my team. She had been with me for 7 years. Everybody else was in between. Now, think about that for a moment. What would it look like if you had a team of 4 or 5 people working with you, and the least seniored person had been with you for 7 years? Could you go on vacation and not check in? Could you trust them and let go? So write this down, please, because this is one of the most important things that I could share with you. It's a little adage that's critical. Hire slow, fire fast. Most of us do the opposite. We hire fast, and because we're human and because we care, because we want people to like us, we hold on too long. And we delay the inevitable, which is that we're starting over again. We're in the exact spot we were in 7.5 months ago when we made that improper hire. And most of us aren't taught how to interview. We're not taught what questions to ask. We're not taught how to onboard and train somebody appropriately. We're not taught about personality assessments and how to really understand what's the ideal personality for this position. It's hard. It's hard to be a really good loan officer because we have to adapt new skills and become true leaders and true, little CEOs, So when you get that red list, the next thing you really want to do is make sure that you're thinking through, like, who is the personality? What is the personality of the person? What's their skill set? What are the types of open-ended questions I want to be asking to really vet out and make sure that I make a great hire the first time? Because, boy, I'll tell you, if you make a great hire the first time, you're armed and dangerous. You could really go to the next level, bud.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think this lady here in the white vest, then Karen, and then the gentleman over there.
Hi, my name is Linda Brandt. I'm with Atlantic Bay Mortgage out of Asheville, North Carolina. We're in a business that is highly emotional. So you're dealing with a number of realtors who may do 2 or 3 deals a year. So that one deal that you're working on is highly volatile to them. They tend to use you as a pincushion, as a punching bag. You're also dealing with home buyers, a lot of times first-time home buyers, who are incredibly scared to death about buying their largest liability. What are some of the tips that you can give us as loan officers who frequently become counselors to these people in handling emotional situations and personalities?
Linda, right? Yes. Thank you, Linda. My answer may seem flippant and maybe even a little abstract, but it's love yourself enough to not engage in a relationship like the one that you just described. The only reason that you have a relationship like that, which I used to have, those relationships. I could tell you some stories that I'm almost embarrassed to even talk about the abuse that I put myself through in very dysfunctional, subservient relationships with referral partners. So I've been there. It wasn't until which time that I loved myself and had confidence in myself. It's like Craig Stratton, who's sitting over here, or actually I think maybe he left for a second. Where are you, Craig? Good. It's like Craig was talking about on stage this morning, about really the importance of getting fiscal literacy so you can go talk to a CFP and have an intelligent conversation. I mean, look, you're the product. And the best salespeople are always the ones that have the highest degree of belief in the product. So it really is an inside job. So the goal for you or for any of us should be to not feel uncomfortable about teaching our referral partner how to work with us. So there was a lady who I used to work with. Her name was, I know this is going to sound really funny. Her name was Candy Bowles. Yes, that was her name. Okay? And Candy was a really sweet lady. She's a really nice person. She's a realtor, did about, 2-3 deals a year, or seemingly. And yeah, like every one that I worked on her with her on was her mortgage payment. And she's stressed. And she would bulldoze her way through my receptionist and want to preempt my day, and didn't really have a tremendous amount of respect for the fact that I was trying to run my own little operation. So I had to have for a while, I just dealt with it, because I kind of needed to, or at least I thought I needed to, okay? And then I kind of got to the point where I realized that if I want to be a top producer, I need to act as if I'm a top producer. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? How can I expect to go to that level if I'm not going to first treat myself? Look, the only relationship any of us are really ever having when it's all said and done is the one with ourselves. It's the only relationship that exists. I really want you to take that in. If you don't have a high degree of respect for yourself, you're going to attract people that don't have a high degree of respect for you. So the question really becomes, why would I or you or anybody else allow ourselves to be subjected to a relationship that clearly doesn't really serve us at the end of the day? Probably fear. Usually always goes back to that. Fear that you won't make enough money, fear that if they stop referring business to you, you're not going to be as financially solvent as you'd like to be or whatever. But the suggestion would be to have an honest, kind conversation with that person and explain to them that, look, I know that when we work on a transaction together, that it's important to you, and it's important to me too. What is it that I can do to help build trust between the two of us? Because very honestly, I can no longer have the relationship be the way that it is right now. Okay, so it's drawing that boundary. and getting really clear within oneself as to what you're going to allow into your world. And in Candy's case, she kept doing it. And then I had to just call her up and say, I've really enjoyed working with you. And I'm so appreciative of the confidence that you've had in me over the last, year and a half or whatever it had been. I said, but I don't think we're a good fit any longer. Now, here's the thing. When you have that conversation with somebody, don't underestimate the power of the message that you just sent to yourself, because you chose you. And when you choose you, the universe responds and says, okay, now you're ready to have people that are at the next level to work with you. But it takes some confidence and a little bit of leap of faith. And the same goes true for clients. I remember there's this guy named Chris Herrera. And he was a $750,000 borrower. And he just bulldozed his way through my office manager and was not kind and interrupted me 2 times. And I finally say, hey, Chris, I said, can't have you do that anymore, man. I mean, it's just not okay. Well, he didn't listen, and he did it again. And we were already approved and ready to go to docs. And I just said, Chris, it was a refi. I wouldn't do this on a purchase because it would really be detrimental. But I said, hey, look, I said, I just want you to know that I'm going to cancel your loan. I'm sorry. And I walked away from a $6,500 commission check. But I was at a stage in my career where I knew that if I allow myself to continue to engage in those kinds of relationships, the universe is going to keep bringing those kind of relationships to me. I mean, that's how it works. So be very careful about, the messages that you're sending to yourself. Is that helpful? Yeah. Okay. My dear friend who shares the same birthday as me. Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Can you stand up and tell everybody your name, please?
I'm a loan originator, and I've been originating for about 20 years, and I've worked with Tim, and I've watched the perfect loan process, and I have not been able to pass the baton. Mm-hmm. And in listening today, I think I've maybe recognized that since I've been in the business for 20 years and have the same clients and the same referral sources, part of what happens when they refinance or they purchase and their ex-husband does and then their kids do, they've worked that way with me for so long that it's like a check-in, every 5-year check-in. And is it possible after 20 years to start passing the baton and not have the referral sources that are my friends that I travel with and then my clients that always check in with me not feel, and still let them feel important? Does that make sense?
Of course it does. I know you so well. I mean, yeah, gosh, so her name is Karen Cashmere, by the way, because she forgot to give us her name. But I just want you to know how brave you are. I know you, so I know I know how hard this is for you when it comes to letting go of that. Karen, if I may just share a little bit with everybody, Karen is she's a great loan officer. She does, 10 deals a month and has for many years, sometimes more than that. And what she's really passionate about is providing terrific service to her clients and to her borrower, or to her referral partners. And it's a little bit of a hook. So when I say it's a little bit of a hook, it's like they validate you. See, that's the seductive part, is that, and this goes back to the storyteller. So it's like you're amazing at being there for them, and they love you, and you love taking the long loan app, and you have a man in your life now that you got from that long loan app. So it's like you have all of these things that have that have come into your world, but then at the same time, it's like you're stretched so thin. So it's like there's what I call on a psychological level, and this is one of the things that Julie and I work with our clients on a lot, it's called a competing intention. So Karen's defining, I have an intention to go up to maybe 15 or 20 loans a month or work less hours, although she doesn't really work that many hours right now, and I give her a hard time about it all the time. And on the other hand, the other part of the intention that's competing with it is that I've created this structure with them and this repetitive relationship with them to where I'm afraid that they won't like me if I'm not everything to them all the time like I always have been, right? So you've got this, it's like this battle internally. So the answer is always that the truth is the easiest script. You know, people, you know, the truth is so refreshing. Like, what about sitting down with them and being from right here, telling them what's going on? They love you. They'll always love you. You don't have to worry about that. You're an amazing lady. I mean, I'm really struggling because I realize I have to do business in a different way than I have in the past. And it's hard for me because I go to these mortgage conferences and I've hired coaches, and I know that in order for me to really be the professional that I'm capable of being, that I need to start to really focus my job description on the things that are ultimately in my skill set and my strong suit, and that I need to build a team of people around me and have them do a little bit more of the communication and answering of the questions that I used to do. And I wanted to let you know that I'm bringing aboard somebody. Now, for you, it's going to be critically important to find the right person. The person that is like you, that cares and has the impeccability that you have in your caring of your client. Okay? And if you find that person, like, I mean, just so you know it's possible, boom. Like, I mean, whew. I found the right person. Like, and I know what it's like to be afraid of letting go and like putting all my hard work in the hands of somebody else and having it not work out. But like I found a great person in Julie as my business partner, and it's like I can trust her implicitly, and there are people out there that you're going to be able to trust. And I think what you're going to find is that your clients are actually not going to care as much as you think. I think that they're still going to want to talk to you, but you can create an environment within your system to where they still have you, okay? But that when it comes to the paper push and the answering of can I get a deadline extended on my loan approval, et cetera, that they will respect and go to that other person. If you have somebody like Julie that's super friendly, that cares, that's there for them. And it's going to require a leap of faith. But it's also something that can be somewhat mitigated by you getting the right person on your team with you and then having that honest conversation. And if there are a few people who say, and by the way, this is highly unlikely, no, you know, Karen, I don't want to work with you anymore because I only want to talk to you. I'm not so sure that that's the person you want to be working with anyway. Because they're not really being the friend that you might be thinking that they are if they're going to place those kind of unreasonable demands on you. Thanks, Karen. Yeah.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
If you get an opportunity to work with Tim, he is amazing, and he changed my life.
Did anybody else, was there somebody over here? Thank you. And then you'll be next, sir, over here.
Thank you. And I also want to say thanks for creating Loan Toolbox because it gave me a lot of confidence and action items back early on in my career.
Can I get your name, please?
Oh, my name is Chris.
Chris, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you give us some more examples on how to differentiate between what would sand and pebbles be?
Sure. Well, really, there are two types of sand. So we tend to look at things through the lens of ROI, which is return on investment of time, so from a monetary perspective. And that's important. I mean, it's critical. But it's half of the equation. So before I get to the second half of the equation, let me just say that sand, by definition, is anything that doesn't yield the type of hourly rate of pay that we talked about in the example of the gentleman up front here. Taking a client's phone call and answering their question as to whether or not this credit excuse letter is a sufficient one, or whether or not you can delay this request for this condition or whatever. I mean, that's sand time. Somebody else within your organization can be doing that. And there are people out there, believe it or not, and I'm referring to a personality assessment when I say a high S, but there are people out there that are actually not only really good at that, but they like it. Like, they like being nurturing and patient and answering people's questions and being in service. You know, and that's amazing. And Karen's one of those people. I mean, she just raised her hand, and that's a part of her little conflict because it's a bit of a hook, okay? So that's half the equation. The other half of the equation is ROE. And ROE is return on energy. So we're all energetic human beings. We wake up every morning, we have a certain energy level. When we're jacking ourselves up with caffeine, like I had to this afternoon because I'm awfully tired, I'm trying to increase my energy level, okay? And think of it every morning you wake up and I give you, Chris, 100 energy chips. And based upon how you choose to spend your time, you will either run out of those energy chips before the day is over, or maybe you may go to bed and actually have some left over. That's the name of the game. So it's not just what's paying me effectively in what I'm choosing to do, it's how uplifting is it to me. Like right now, I am actually gaining energy chips. Like I feel more alive now than I did an hour ago because I'm doing what I love to do. I've identified the fact that sitting here and answering questions is a very different experience for me than presenting a canned presentation, which is why I don't do that anymore. Like I am in heaven right now. Time is standing still. Like I can do this for another 3 hours. Okay, what are the things in your world that give you that feeling? Okay, now I know that it may not seem like I'm completely answering your question, but I'm going to in a minute. So sand is anything that drains you of your energy. So like I'll give you an example of sand in my world. Christmas morning, kids open up their gifts, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that I need to put together and read instructions. I mean, I'll be out of energy chips by 9:30 in the morning on Christmas morning. Okay, I mean, it's like that, no, that's really not a good thing for me. That's sand time. So what are the things that pay you appropriately, and what are the things that are uplifting and fulfilling to you? Like, I keep referencing Craig, and I referenced you a little while ago, but you were probably using the restroom or something, but it was super clear to me today that in those 15 minutes that you were on stage, you were in your genius, bro. I mean, you were like I could feel your energy. I mean, you need to do more of that in your life. Like, that's what you're good at. You're gifted, you know? And it's like, when you're doing it, it's fun for you, and it's like, what are those things that are fun for you, Chris? That's what I want to know. Those are your rocks. Those are the things you need to put into your calendar more of. Maybe it's hiking, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's, you know, connecting with your children. You know, hopefully, if you want to be a great loan officer, it's certainly connecting with clients and referral partners. I mean, if we're going to get super real about it, if those things are mentally and emotionally draining to you, it may be that you're actually not even in the right line of work. Who am I to say? You know? So getting super real within oneself. You know, I mean, 2 years ago, Stephen, you know, asked me to speak for a half hour downstairs in the Pearl Ballroom in front of 2,600 people. And I told him that it didn't work for me. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. I said, I need more time with them. I'm clear on what I like to do. I like to interview, and I like to connect with them and answer their questions. He said, well, I can give you this ballroom upstairs, but it has a bunch of round tables in it, so it only holds like 400 people. I'm like, I'll take it. He's like, really? He's like, surprised, because, you know, like, he would think that I'd rather speak in front of 2,600 people. No, I mean, that actually isn't what I'm here for. You know, so I'm clear on that, so now I'm making choices of what I put into my calendar, which are my rocks based upon what gives me energy and what is high ROI for me. Is that helpful? And I hope that I'm not being abstract.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. You'll be next, and then we have this gentleman over here with the beard. Okay, and then we'll get you. And that might be it, unfortunately. But this gentleman, could you raise your hand, please, sir?
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is after this is over, there's about a 20, 25-minute break. I'm going to go sit out there. We have a big circle of chairs. Come on out. We'll continue this outside. I'll stay for as long as you need me to. I know some of you are flying home today, but I'm here tonight. So I'll sit out there for another 3 hours with you and help you. I love doing what I'm doing right now, and I'll keep doing it. Go ahead.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
And as the other gentleman said, thank you very much for starting Loan Toolbox. I think that's had a large effect on many of the people in this room as well as myself.
Thank you. Could I get your name, please?
My name is Dalton Clark. I'm a
Dalton.
branch manager and a loan officer from Anchorage, Alaska. My question for you is really more in the branch manager piece than in the loan officer piece. Can you give us some suggestions on how to get, I mean, we're all standing here in this room today and we're listening to you and we're really getting what you're saying about how we can improve ourselves in that way, and we want to pass that on to our loan officers, but it's really hard to get them to see the benefit of that, even though they say, they give you the right answer, right? Oh yeah, sure, I want to get better, I want to do more loans, oh sure, I'll do whatever you say. But the reality is you can lead that horse to water, but you can't make them drink until they want to. How do we go about getting more buy-in from them so that they're motivated internally to do the things that are going to get them successful?
I so understand and appreciate your question. You know, I really, really do. It's something that I've struggled with at times during my life. You know, I used to have a very successful mortgage company with loan originators that I knew were capable of achieving so much more than they were achieving. And for a guy like me who was super self-motivated and, you know, was able to teach them a lot, it was really frustrating for me to like impart all this stuff on them. Like they had Loan Toolbox for free and none of them ever went into it, you know, and it was just like, you know, it was kind of crazy for me. And what I realized was that, and it's so appropriate to what we do now, you know, it's like Leadership 360, so I'm going to put it through the lens of that as it applies to you. You know, we take 9 people every year. It's not based solely by any means on how much volume you do. You know, it's not based upon that. I mean, you could do, you know, 8 loans a month and you're still a candidate. It's based on a lot more than that. It's based upon the whole person of where they are. And the reason I bring that up is this, is because when I'm evaluating those people to bring into our program as a part of the interview process, Julie and I are looking at, is this person ready? Do they have the self-awareness, and are they ready to truly make the next step in their business and in their life? For you when you're recruiting, now I'm going to tie it to you. I would like to see you, to the extent that you don't already do this, start to put things through more of a lens of, is this person ready to grow? Are they a ship ready to take off and set sail? Or are they somebody that is not, no matter what their production level is, they're not yet ready to move forward? Because here's what I've learned. The more attached you are to somebody else, or for that matter, anything outside of yourself, so the more attached that any of us are to having something fulfilled outside of ourselves, the more suffering we experience in our lives. You know, that is the seed of all suffering, is an attachment to a result, especially ones that we can't control. So the best that you can do, in my view, and this may not be the answer that you want to hear, and I know I'm not approaching it from the tactical level that I think that you were asking the question, is that you can plant seeds in their soil, and when they happen to germinate, will be up to them. But I have spent far too much time trying to get people to experience their own greatness and suffered all throughout to know that that doesn't really work. People will either be ready or they're not. Your job is to provide them with the opportunity by maybe exposing them to education. Perhaps as an example, you could buy the video of this event, okay? And then cater in lunch, you know, 4 consecutive Wednesdays and watch segments of it together. But you actually imposing upon them or getting them to actually implement will be a much more difficult task, and one that I don't know that you will find tremendous success with. Now, with that said, to the extent that you don't already do this, do you do personality assessments?
With the loan officer in question, no, it was before that.
It would be interesting to do a DISC. And I'd go an extra step. I'd go to Tony Robbins' website, and I'd have that person do a DISC assessment that has what is also called a values index. Okay? So there's 2 components to the assessment. There's their behavioral tendency, which for those of you that are branch managers, owners of companies, et cetera, you know, the best loan officers typically are high Ds. in the DISC assessment. A high D is somebody who is self-motivated, driven, strategic. You know, they're not going to wait for their greatness to come to them. They're going to go out and get it. Also, somebody who's a high I, if you have a combo high D, high I, you've got a really good combo. Okay, because they're also extroverted and gregarious and great people person, great networker. Okay? You will find it to be very rare, very, very rare, that if you have somebody whose D is muted, okay, and their I is reasonably low as well, that they're going to be a successful loan originator. So it would be interesting to know if this person that you're trying to get to be something, it may be that they're just not ever going to be that. Better to know that when you know, before you hire or recruit them, but certainly better to know it before you continue to expend your energy on a relationship that it just may not be the right job for them. It doesn't make them a bad person. I mean, it just means maybe they're not ready or they never will be.
Unfortunately, you're probably right.
You know, I know that it's probably not exactly the answer that you wanted to hear, but I would DISC assess them. And in the intermetrics, there's another component that's really interesting, the values part. And you can do it for free on Tony Robbins' website. The values, if you find somebody who's a high economic, that's super important. Like, you know, like somebody who's a high D, high econ means that they're self-motivated and they're driven by money. They're going to be a good loan officer. They're going to figure out how to be a great loan officer. You take a guy like Brad Cohen, who I interviewed this morning. I've never seen, you know, Brad's, you know, DISC and his values, but I'm pretty sure he's both those. Like he fits the bill as I've gotten to know him. He's self-motivated. He took that detailing business. He parlayed it. And there's nobody that gets Brad Cohen and my guests to get up every morning and to be great. Is that true?
I would think so, yes.
Well, he's nodding because he's sitting right next to you. I don't have to teach Brad that. That's in his fabric. You know? Now, when I say that, I want to be real clear on something else before I close, is that, you know, I wouldn't want Brad, no offense if I keep using you, I wouldn't want Brad processing my loans. Because I want somebody who is softer, perhaps, patient. I wouldn't want to process my own loans. I don't have a lot of S in my DISC. You want somebody, you know, like everybody is perfect for a position. It's just that have we put them on the right seat on the bus? And the last thing that I'll say is sometimes the greatest gift that you can give to somebody is to liberate them. Sometimes they're just not in the right seat on the bus and they're trying really hard and it's like a salmon swimming upstream and a tremendous amount of energy is to be expended. And sometimes it's best to just get real. And I'm not saying that's the case with your loan originator. I'm suggesting that you check it out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know that you had your hand up. Was there somebody before you over here? I don't remember. Okay, so we'll go to this gentleman in the front row here. And I'm going to be mindful of time because I don't want to trample into the next one. This will be the last question, and then, like I said, I'll be outside for an indefinite period for any of you. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Larry Paul. I'm a loan officer in Orange, California. And one of the things that I struggle with is that our company, like you mentioned, that the processors get K-1s and tax returns and other things, or not tax returns, maybe pay stubs, bank statements, whatever. So in our company, in our office, we have to do that ourselves. So I am processing my own loans. And so I find that when I start to build a little bit of momentum of actually generating leads, I have to kind of get off the gas because I get consumed with processing and managing the loans that I have in the pipeline because things are always coming back to me that, you know, I have to update the pay stubs, I have to do whatever. So how do I get, and I'm doing 2 loans a month now, it's probably on average. So I don't know that I have the production that would justify hiring an assistant to do those things for me. But so that's what I'm struggling with. How do I transition? How do I keep growing enough that I can do that?
Well, I mean, isn't it interesting, Larry, when you think about what I said, and thank you for being vulnerable and open and sharing with everybody because you're helping a lot of people other than just yourself and asking this question. So isn't it interesting that what I heard was that you kind of validated what I shared earlier as it related to the process that we went through with your hourly rate of pay. You know, you're probably making annually about what a good processor makes. which makes a lot of sense because that's really what you're doing, more than loan originating, right?
True.
Now, when it comes to your company, you know, I'm just going to say it. I don't think your company gets it. Sorry. I don't even know who you work for, but like, I don't know. I mean, it's like if you want your loan officers to not make great money and not be wildly successful, have them do $30 an hour work. And that's what you're going to get. You know, I mean, and I hope I'm not offending anybody by saying that, but I mean, that's just how I feel. It's like if you're truly a great asset to them, then they should be supporting you in a manner to where you could really take advantage and leverage your greatness. Now, you have a responsibility in that, okay? Which is that I don't believe it's like, you know, I didn't buy my kid his first car when he turned 16. I mean, I think you have to have some skin in the game, and I think you have to be self-motivated to have your own greatness, like Brad Cohen back here is an example I just referenced. It's like nobody told him to like go off and be a loan officer and start reinvesting money into flyers. He just wanted to be great. So what about the idea of you going to your organization, the branch manager, owner, and just saying, hey, look, you know, I was just at this event in Vegas, and I'm seeing it. Like, I'm seeing it. It's like screaming at me now, okay? I get what I need to do. And can we work something out to where I can get a little more support, and I'm willing to participate financially in it, put some skin in the game here, to get some support from you and to really start to shed some of the things that I'm having to do. I mean, let's be fair about it. Like, you can't go to them asking for a handout. That's not fair to them. It's got to be a win-win for both parties. But I don't think that you're ever going to get, based upon what you described, to 8, 10 deals a month if you're in the muck, if you're in the processing of loans. It's just not going to happen. I've never seen it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Excuse me. So, out in that corner of the foyer, Julie and I will be, and we have applications for Leadership 360. If any of you feel called, please fill out an application. The process is as follows, is that we will set up an interview. Julie always does the first interview. We'll get you calendared. I do the second interview, so you'll interview with both of us. My interview is more of a teaching interview, so you'll get, I hope, some true value from the interview. And then we will collaborate, her and I, and decide whether or not to extend an invitation, and then you'll decide whether or not it feels of resonance with you. We also have a little table out there. For those of you that didn't see the video, I would highly recommend, if you have interest, that you come out there and watch it, because I think it really does an effective job of sharing what Leadership 360 is. It's really predominantly our graduates and our current clients who speak in the video about what the experience has been like for them. And then additionally, like I said, I'm going to do what I love to do, and I'm going to sit in the corner over there with a bunch of people, hopefully, and continue what we're doing right now, because it's really fun for me. So I just want to say thank you. I know that an hour and a half is a long time for you to be sitting in here. I hope that you've got at least one good idea. And it was truly my pleasure to be up here with you guys today.